to my bad, and now it changed slides. So hello everyone, welcome to the 6th session of the Computing Research Association's Undergraduate Research to PhD workshop series. My name is Dr. Karen Arcos, and I will be co-leading this session with Dr. Dan Gardner. And before we fully get started, I'd like to let everyone know that this session will be recorded and the recording will be shared on YouTube. So I'd just like to let you know, in case anyone is uncomfortable, you can feel free to mute yourselves as well as to turn off your cameras throughout the session today. So today's session, we'll be covering decisions on how the panelists that have generously donated their time today will be speaking to you all about how they chose how they made their decisions about choosing the graduate campuses that they chose to attend. And to give you all a review, during the last session last week, we covered the items shown here. So we talked about the elements that make up a strong statement of purpose, as well as workshopped drafting a thesis, as well as a statement of purpose. And we facilitated a peer review in order for those who are participating with us to get their theses for their statements of purposes reviewed. And you can watch the recording. The link to the recording is shown on this slide as well. During this particular session, we'll be hearing from panelists, as I mentioned earlier, who will be sharing more about their PhD application experiences. So these are current PhD students who were in the application phase not too long ago. So we'll be learning from them about what their experiences were like, as well as learning about what being a current PhD student is like. Yes, that's correct. To the person who just asked, I'll be sharing more about how we can ask questions. But yes, the Q&A is where you'll be asking questions. Sorry, my PowerPoint is being, oh my God. Are you all seeing the ground rules slide?
We are, but it's back to the slide deck rather than presentation.
Sure. I'm not sure why this is happening. Let me do this again. I'm sorry. Try this again. Okay, let me go back.
Karen, in case it's helpful, would you like me to share my screen and we can go from there?
If this happens again, yeah, might as well, but I'm already starting to share it, so. Okay.
Yeah, we're back.
It should be back to normal now. Okay, so just to give you all, before we actually get started with the panel, we wanted to give you all a set of ground rules that we could all follow just to make this as enjoyable an experience as we can for everyone. So first off, to those of you who would be asking the questions, we ask that you please be respectful and appropriate when you're asking these questions. And to the panelists, as we mentioned before, you can feel free to decline to answer any questions that you might not be comfortable with answering. And in order to get to as many questions of interest as possible, we ask you all to put your questions in the Q&A feature, which someone just mentioned earlier, as well as to raise your hand. You can raise your hand in order to be called on to ask your questions aloud. You can click on the Q&A icon in the meeting controls in order to open the Q&A window, and then you can type and submit your question, and you can do so either anonymously or having us view your name. It's up to you. If you'd like a question,
But real fast, just in case some of you, the Q&A function may be in the more, if you haven't used it recently. Sometimes the Zoom will hide it in the more icon. So just FYI.
thanks, Dan. Once you have your Q&A feature opened, if you'd like a question from the Q&A to be answered, feel free to please upvote that question. And in order to do that, you can go to the Q&A panel and click on the thumbs up icon next to the question that you'd like to get upvoted. And now we'll be starting briefly with some panelist introductions. So starting with the next slide, if each of the panelists can please briefly introduce themselves and share their research area and their research interest for each of your slides, that would be great.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Janet and I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Washington. My research is in computing education, and specifically I'm interested in creating equitable computer science learning environments and designing culturally responsive and accessible pedagogy, learning technologies, and curriculum.
I'm next, but I'm not sure if the
Yeah,
slides.
I think you locked the share screen again.
It's being so weird. Yeah, Julia, it might be better if you could share, please. I'll just let you know when to change slides.
Perfect.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Josahandi Cisneros. I am a second-year PhD student at UCI. I work with Professor Stacy Branham in the Insight Lab, and what we do is essentially study the accessibility within computing education as well as learning technologies. And what that means is that we essentially look at how the accommodation process as well as the accessibility of specific programs, algorithms, and just technology in general affects like the transition for high school students who have disabilities into college education. So yeah, I'm very excited to share more about what I do today.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanley. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at University of Michigan School of Information. My research focuses on how social media platforms can impact people's career interests and aspirations, particularly among young adults who are 18 to 25 years old. So this is a critical developmental period where people are making major career decisions. And so to explore this, I use primarily qualitative research methods like interviews, surveys, and content analyses. And I'm in the HCI and social computing space, but I also draw a lot from communication and media studies and also vocational and social psychology. So very interdisciplinary.
Hello everyone, I am Shafiq. I am working with the PERSEC lab under the supervision of Dr. Antonio Bianchi. So my main research interest is in software security. It's like I'm trying to find vulnerabilities in different types of software systems. And I sometimes also look at like come up with protection mechanisms that would enhance different kind of environments such as industrial control systems as such. And also I sometimes work on the privacy aspects as well. So yeah, nice to be here.
Thank you all so much for joining. So in order to transition to questions, we wrote down a couple of questions to start by asking, so I'll go ahead and get started. But in the meantime, for anyone attending today's session, if you could please start either adding your questions to the Q&A feature or raise your hand so that we can call on you, that would be super helpful. So for the first question, to anyone on the panel, if you could please describe what your journey to a PhD program was like in 2 minutes or less.
I can start.
Sounds good.
So I started doing research the summer after my sophomore year of college. I went to Duke for undergrad, and they had a research program that functioned similarly to like one of the NSF like REU programs, except it was only for Duke students. So I started working with my advisor then, and then continued throughout my junior year. Wrote an honors thesis my senior year before graduating like this past May. Um, Throughout that process, I also did apply to NSF RU programs. And so I actually did the WRU program at the University of Washington. And so after I finished the program, I realized that I really enjoyed doing research like in different settings. And so I decided to apply the PhD program as my senior year. And so I like wrote my application materials in the fall, did some interviews in January, and then went to visit days for schools I was accepted to in March and started in September.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, well, I can go. Yeah, so my journey was kind of a bit hectic and fascinating as well, because like I was working full time at Samsung when I was like preparing to apply for PhD. So I had to like balance between the whole full time job and also like finding the list of the universities, the advisors I would be like willing to work with. So it was a bit hectic, but like in the end, like when I was like exploring different kind of research areas, reading papers, preparing for interviews, it was kind of like a bit adventurous for me. So yeah, kind of it all was worth it, like because at the end I ended up with some offers. So yeah, so that was more or less my journey.
I guess I could go next. So my journey to a PhD has been a little bit not I guess unconventional, just because I kind of like fell in love with research while I was studying computer science as an undergrad, and then getting a PhD was kind of like a second thought. So I was just like, PhD is more of a way for me to continue to do research. So that's one of the reasons that, I mean, one of the big motivators for me to like even pursue grad school. So that meant that I only applied to 2 schools because I only wanted to do like 2 very specific like programs. And it actually worked out really well for me, but it's not something people do. So yeah, I guess that's the thing that I have to say. That's just like a little bit different than anyone else. It's just like for me was to like research the program, and if it's not this, then I don't want to do a PhD. So
I could go next. So for me, I had a similar experience as Janet. So I did a lot of undergraduate research programs, one of which was through the University of Michigan, and another one through what started at Pittsburgh and is now at UT Austin, called the iSchool Inclusion Institute. It's actually how I met Dan. And so because of those research projects and research experiences, I was really inspired and motivated to pursue a PhD. I did my undergrad right before, so I didn't do anything in between undergrad and PhD. And I did my undergrad in user experience design and research, and there was the option of going into industry, but I saw myself really being involved and really passionate about continuing into academia and doing a PhD. So I chose to go that route.
Interesting. So far the themes I'm hearing have been more the programs have made a difference that you attended, programs during undergraduate research, and as well as like being really selective about the programs that you chose to apply to. And oh, go ahead. Someone was going to say something.
no, I was gonna say yes. That's right what you said.
Awesome.
Karen, we have a question in Q&A. Would you like me to ask that, or do you want to move to another question?
Oh, I have it open. So the question is from Harper, and it's, are there things you know now that you wish you knew while you were applying?
I guess I can go first. I'm a first generation student, so that means there were a lot of things that I didn't know when I first was applying to school. And I actually had, right as I graduated from undergrad, I tried to apply for a master's program. And actually, my application was wrong because I did not consult with like somebody who actually like went through the process of applying to grad school on how to complete the application. So when it came to like waiving my rights to be able to see my letters of recommendation, I did not do that, which is like something that I think it's not a social like rule that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to like waive your rights, and that was something I didn't do. So I think like after that experience, I essentially went and like look into like every possible piece of information that I can find on how to apply it to grad school. So now that I know, I think I wish I knew better, I guess, tools or resources on how to really inform myself and learn how to do an grad school application for the specific field that I'm trying to apply for. So I think that's kind of like the thing that I wish I knew, is like it's very specific and every field has its rules, and every, I guess, like even school has its own rules. So look into that.
For sure. So really doing your research and knowing what each school is what each school requires, and about like the available resources, like the UR to PhD program that we're all participating in today. If any other panelists have thoughts, I'm happy to take them, or we can move on to another question.
I can briefly respond to this. I guess I'm having trouble like thinking of a answer because I'm really happy with kind of how my journey turned out. But I think if there is anything, I would say similar to what Josa was saying, like what research are out there for after applying. So maybe not so much about the application process. I think when I was applying, I presented a research, or I proposed a research topic that I actually didn't end up doing for my PhD, which I can talk more about later. But I wish after that, like, where do I look next? Like, how do I explore all the different research topics I want to look into? Like, is it just Google Scholar, or should I like reach out to other students? Like, I didn't really know what the next step was in terms of like how to go about a research topic, if that makes sense.
For sure, yeah. So really, again, resources, like informing yourself on what's out there to help you throughout the process. Okay, so we can move on to another question then, unless others have an answer. I'm happy to bounce another question to you all. So what factors made you consider applying to specific PhD programs? And we can go to the question in the Q&A after this question's done.
Okay. I guess like the most important factor was like whether there was a professor there whose research interests like aligned with my own. It's like one metric I found helpful was like when I read their research, like am I excited by what they're doing? And like would I want to engage in similar research like for the next like 5 to 6 years? And I guess other factors I considered was like the size of the research community at a program, just because like I'm doing research in computing education, and so a lot of schools like don't have that many like faculty who do research in this area. And so I feel like I was also very like specific in the schools I applied to. And I only applied to programs where there was like a critical mass of people essentially. And I guess like one other factor that was pretty important was where campus was located, just because like it is a big commitment to like decide where you're living for the next 5 to 6 years. And I think that like that also really like helped me narrow down my list.
For sure. So really like not just A, focusing on the academics and the committees and whatnot, but B, also focusing on like fit. And that's something that Dan and I have talked about throughout these sessions. It's really finding a campus where you see yourself fitting in, which is like where the living aspect of this comes into play. So thanks for mentioning that. Would anyone else like to respond to this, or should we move to
Like
Okay, go ahead.
for me, it's pretty similar to Janet, because like I was also focusing on the specific research labs who were working on this, the area I am interested in. So I was like narrowing them down, like which specific programs have like more chances of doing that kind of research. And the second thing was kind of the school and its kind of its ranking, because like some programs tend to have a specific focus on cybersecurity as it is my field. So I try to like find those and like put some tiers like the schools that are my dream target, and then some safe schools as well. So that way I try to organize this so that I get as sufficient offers as I can get. So
Interesting. So you chose to rank as well.
yeah, I try to see like in which schools the cybersecurity program has like more research going on. So based on that, basically.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Okay, so we can go to another question that Harper asked, unless others would like to answer. But if not, the question is, did you apply to programs with many potential advisors or only one or two? And how broad was your intended research focus?
I guess I can go first on that one, just because I think my advisor was like the single like factor that really motivated me to attend and choose my specific program. And that is because for me, it's very important that, you know, I not only do research, but I also like I'm involved in the community that I'm like, I don't want to say studying, but I'm working with. So having Stacey Branham as my advisor was kind of like, you know, like my goal, just because I feel like that can really make or break your experiences at, you know, doing a PhD. Like if you, the topic can be the most interesting topic that you can think of and you can love the topic, but if you hate working with your advisor or you don't, you know, your views don't align, or there's like, you know, like kind of like conflict between, you know, like how they see, you know, this specific thing and how you see it, it definitely makes a difference. So I think the main thing for me was like, yes, having the opportunity to work with my advisor was like kind of like the main thing that I wanted to, you know, consider and why I chose. And then, Karen, can you remind me what was the second part of that question again? Just kind of like.
He asked if you applied to, let me see. How broad was your intended research focus?
Yeah, so it was like, for me, it was more like, okay, I want to work with a specific advisor, and if I can't do any of that work, then maybe something around that. But I would definitely say it's like it was more of like anything that she does, I wanted to do. So maybe somebody has a different view on that.
So I think I applied to 4 programs total, and so half of them there was only one person I wanted to work with, and I was very much like, if I go there, I want to work with this one person. And then the other 2 programs, like I think there were like 2 or 3 faculty members who like I indicated interest like working with. And so part of that was because some programs, like for your first year, you do more of like a rotation where you're like supposed to be working with multiple people. And so like I wanted to make sure that like I would be happy essentially like in that setting. In terms of like my research focus, like it's like I feel like I did a lot of research like on the advisors like I could have been working with. And so like when I like wrote my applications, like I did kind of, I guess, like tailor my research focus like what that professor was working on at the moment. That like was something I was interested in. And so for some schools, I like wrote more broadly just because like the like professor I wanted to work with like did a lot of different, like does a lot of different things. And some schools like were much more focused, I guess. Yeah.
For me, I kind of like tried to find out some interlying sections in the research area I was interested in. For example, like I was interested in security, so I tried to focus on software security, and there is also like machine learning security, and there is also like privacy systems. So I tried to like move around these topics, so and find the professors whose research was like most interest to me. So yeah, so I try to keep some 3 or 4 subdomains around and then apply to those to like increase my chances basically.
I can add to my experience. So I actually only applied to one PhD program, which was Michigan, and so I was very lucky to get in here. But in terms of the advisors that I listed on my essay, so I listed 3 different advisors, 2 of which I had already worked with in undergrad, and I knew that we would work well if I were to work with them in my PhD. And then I listed a third one who was one of my undergraduate professors, but I met with her at some point, like asking about her research background and seeing if there was maybe a fit there. And I did really enjoy talking with her and learning about her background. And I saw myself potentially also doing work in her area. And so I listed those 3 advisors. In terms of the research focus that I had proposed in my statement, so it was on like social media influencers and like well-being. And each of the advisors I listed had either a match with in terms of like the methodology that I wanted to do, or the topic, or the kind of like approach to research. So maybe like their theoretical background. So they each had a little bit of something, but there wasn't one single advisor that was specifically doing like social media influencer and well-being work. But I still felt like because I had experience working with them, I knew that I could still be successful in that area. Again, I didn't end up doing that research, but I think it all worked out in my case. So.
For sure. So it sounds like from what you all have shared, it's really being like both broad and specific, being broad in terms of like what general areas are you interested in, but also being specific about like who works in those areas and trying to create relationships with those individuals to be able to research with them. So as a follow-up question to that, we're just curious to know how you ended up you've mentioned that you identified individuals to work with. So what informed that decision? And did you know the professors that you ended up researching with before graduate school, or how did you start those relationships?
I mean, I can go first. I was going to say, I actually did not know my advisor before applying to grad school. And I got lucky because she has a very strong presence online. So that meant that I can actually like look into what she does, like, you know, what her mission statement is and things like that. So I did not contact my advisor prior to applying to grad school, but I did make sure to, you know enough about her and the work that she's done, and as well as like kind of like where she's at in her career. I knew that, you know, she's like a newer faculty member at my school, so that means that she's still like very interested in like, you know, publishing a lot and working in like specific things and doing different types of projects, which she has like a lot of more energy to, you know, actively work with communities, which was really important for me. So I think even though I didn't really have like an official relationship with them before grad school, I did have you know, a lot of knowledge on who they were and what they do for me to be able to just, you know, like make that, you know, decision of like, yes, this is exactly who I want to work with. I didn't really have to reach out to them, but I would say like I did get lucky because now that I'm like inside and I work in the lab, I know that a lot of the people that end up working with us, it is because they establish a relationship with, you know, the professor or whoever's working in the lab beforehand. So even though it worked out for me, I would definitely advise that, you know, you go out of your way to like, even just like email them. Like sometimes that might be just like the first step that you need to, you know, have a connection or establish that relationship.
Well, in my case, I actually reached out to my professor before getting accepted. So like I was kind of following a few research labs that are working in the same areas that I'm interested in. So I kind of like read some of his papers and then tried to put some ideas about those papers or how we can actually extend those kind of works. And after that, I actually emailed them and reached out to like discuss how we can kind of collaborate. So after that, I got the interview call, and then we actually started working, and then I got the offer. So yeah, I emailed them basically.
So, like my current advisor is the same professor I worked with like during like the RU experience at the University of Washington. So like I guess I knew her beforehand. But for like the other schools, like so some professors like will like they'll like have it on their website that like they don't want people to reach out in advance. So like that's just like a matter like a warning out there. But for for most of the professors I applied to work with, I sent them an email just like introducing myself and asking whether they were even taking students. I think like that's probably also pretty important in this cycle as well, since like a lot of professors might not have funding and therefore might not be able to take anyone at all. And so I thought that would be helpful to know before I spent all the time like writing my application essentially. But beyond that, like I didn't set up a meeting or anything in advance. And yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier that I had reached out to the advisor that I'm now working with prior to applying, but I think another thing to note is that sometimes the people you request to be your advisor aren't the ones that end up picking you. So I've heard of some students like they'll list 2, 3 advisors and they might end up getting someone that they actually didn't put on their application. And that's usually because like the faculty is talking to each other, they're like showing these potential students. And so they kind of are picking from this application pool of like who would work best with them. And so they're also doing work in the back, like making that alignment and matching students to professors. So that's another way that it might happen. Not necessarily how it happened with me, but I did, as I mentioned, choose 3 professors or listed 3 professors. And in my interview, there were actually 5 professors that seemed interested in maybe working with me. And I think they maybe read my statement and then maybe were interested in what I was doing. So they wanted to see from the interview what I wanted to propose and what my kind of research approach was. So that's more of a note than like my personal experience.
So it really varies in terms of like who of you were able to get to know your advisors, but I think the bottom line from what you've all shared is really, even if you don't contact them directly, make sure that you're familiar with their research.
Mm-hmm. Also, because I think that's something you can really like include in your, application and really make it like make that connection if you haven't really made it yet to the point. That's like something like knowing just like even what your advisor is interested, your potential advisor is interested in, then makes you, like really be able to tailor your personal statement or your statement of purpose to that, and then have a greater chance of them picking you.
For sure. So establishing a connection.
Hey.
And to bounce to another question that someone just asked, they're asking.
Karen, sorry, maybe you're already doing this, but just in case I wanted to make sure, we have an anonymous participant. Just
Yes, that's the question I was about to ask.
Excellent. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. Just to give more chances to other people.
Yeah.
So what research experiences prior to your PhD were the most impactful on preparing for your current position, and how do you seek out these experiences? How did you seek out these experiences?
I can go first. Like for me, like I was kind of in a research intensive environment because I was working at like after my undergraduate, I immediately started working for an R&D. So for me, like I didn't have to like seek because like I was in a position which was heavily involved in doing research. So those experience actually helped me because like when I was applying, I actually mentioned those in my SOP as well, statement of purpose as well, that these are the areas I have been working with in my office or stuff like that. So I think like those experiences kind of helped me. So even after that, I was working as a research intern with a professor who is also a professor at a US university. So I kind of like reached out to him again via email, like reading his papers. So for seeking these kind of research opportunities, you can just find like the suitable works that someone is doing in some university. If they are like trying to collaborate, so you can just reach out to them to see like if they are willing to collaborate with you or not. So I think that would be a way to like seek those research opportunities if you want to like get started as an undergraduate.
For sure. So as you all can see here, the panelists have different experiences in terms of after undergrad, some went straight to applying to PhD programs. Other ones, like Shafiq, who just shared, they had work experience before. So it's something else to consider. How might your work experience after undergrad inform your graduate decision as well?
For me, one of the most impactful experiences I had prior to PhD was the undergraduate research opportunities program here at Michigan. So they have a dedicated program for students to learn about what it's like to do research, what does it mean to do research, and so you have to take like a weekly class, kind of like to teach you the ins and outs of research. But then they also help you apply to potential research positions with faculty at the university. And so I was applying to a few different research projects. I knew I wanted to do something with like maybe social media and design and well-being. So I applied to work with professors in that area. And in terms of how I sought out this experience, I just heard of it through class, like they were advertising this program in one of the classes I was in. And so I was really lucky to have been there and have heard about it, because I think that research experience I got through this program is what really inspired me and motivated me to pursue a PhD. I think also it was a paid opportunity. So as an undergrad at the time, I knew that I needed to find employment somewhere. I was working in like the dining hall at the time, and I was really unhappy there. So I was like, you know, what if I got paid to do research? And I was really lucky to get that experience and also be paid. So.
I was just adding to that. I think my experience was very similar to, is it Shanley?
Yeah.
Yes. I think definitely like seek out like any opportunities that you have already like at your hands, whatever institution you're in, because I do think that there's a lot of like programs that promote, like research as an undergrad, and then they might not be as visible as, others, programs are, but there are definitely opportunities. And I think that's also like one of the programs that definitely made a difference, in how I saw myself and how I thought about the future. It's, being able to participate in like, even just like, meetings or like even programs like a weekly program. I also participated in one of those that just teaches you what it really means to do research and just be able to see yourself in that position. So I think it's not just about like, oh yeah, I have the experience. It's also more of like practicing that, embodying that identity of a researcher kind of thing. So that can make a difference.
For sure. So really seeking out programs, sometimes hidden, sometimes over email, that you can find to see if research is more for you. And another question that Harper asked earlier, they're wondering if you had any opportunities to collaborate with researchers at other universities and how that works.
Like I can answer that. Like when I was like kind of like seeking for opportunities, I also like kind of started working with a professor, and I'm kind of still working with him with collaboration with my current advisor. So I basically did what I actually told before, that I read his papers. I try to reach out to him and like see like if he's interested in my ideas, like what I'm sharing about their work. So some of the professors were very interested to hear. So when like I set up like interviews with them, I got them like they tried to like see like if I have any potential, and yeah, that's how I actually started working with one of them. So yeah, so it really helps, I think, to read their research works and try to see how it aligns with what you are thinking. And yeah.
So really maintaining relationships even after you graduate, I think, if I'm understanding correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities to collaborate with other, PhD students or researchers at other universities. The way it has happened for me, it's usually just someone finds my website somehow, or finds me on like the UMSI website and reaches out to me, or I'll reach out to them, and usually that's how it works. I don't really know how people find me, or how I find out other people. It's kind of just, scrolling through maybe LinkedIn, for example, or, going on the university page and looking at their students. In terms of how it works, I think there's two things to consider. One, do you have the bandwidth to take on like another project, especially with people outside of your university? It might be a little bit easier with people you see, in the office, or people at your current school, but that's one thing to consider. Another is if your advisor is okay with it. I think for some people, their advisor might be a little bit more strict in terms of like, no, I really want you to focus on the project that we currently have. Like, you shouldn't be like spending time elsewhere. That isn't the case with me, but that is something I've definitely heard with other advisors. So I think it's also having to, kind of have that discussion with your advisor. And if you feel like it'll be good for your like your professional and academic development, that's definitely something to like fight for. If you feel like collaborating outside of your university is something you feel is like valuable.
For sure. Thank you for answering. To get to another question, was there anything that specifically you think made your application stand out and was most influential in you being accepted to a PhD program, or was the decision of your acceptance more mysterious?
I guess like something that I felt like was the strength of my application was that I had like a lot of like experience like leading research projects, because I know like especially as an undergrad a lot of the times like you're kind of being guided by a PhD student, and so like they're kind of telling you what to do, and you're not really coming up like with your own research questions and like data analysis plans. But like the PhD student I worked with actually let me take the lead on like some of the projects that I worked on, and I also wrote a thesis, and so like for that I had to like come up with my own research question, like do my own related work, like like lit review and things like that. And so I think that was like really helpful because not everyone like really has that kind of like opportunity, I guess. And so I'm very grateful to have had that. And I know like people also mentioned that like I had good recommendation letters, I guess, from like people that I worked like closely with, and like for a long time. But like I will say that like I know it can be really hard to like find 3 strong like research recommendation letters. And I know like one of my letters was more like I guess like teaching focused almost, just because like I was a teaching assistant for like a lot of classes like during undergrad, and so one of my recommenders was someone who I like worked for in that capacity.
I will say I definitely agree with Janet what she had to say, because one of the compliments that I got was like after I was accepted into the program was like, letters of recommendation like really make everything. So I think if you are, you're still like working and in the application process and you still have a chance to really like make some type of connection with professors, I think it's I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it really, if you put the effort, it really like it's really easy to make a connection with somebody academically, like just show up, be there, like, office hours, and you have a chance to introduce yourself, you have a chance to interact with them. And I think that can really make a difference between, like just having a generic like letter of recommendation. Oh yeah, the student is great. They got an A and they did this. And, as opposed to having a professor really know what you care about and really know who you are as a student. So yeah, like I said, like I definitely think that was one of the things that made me like stand out, was like my, the connection that I had with previous people that I had worked with and how much they believed in me. So yes.
For sure. So really making rec letters count. Oh, go ahead, Shafiq.
Okay. Yeah, so like a letter of recommendations are like the most important thing, I think. But other than that, I think the statement of purpose that actually kind of says your story. So that is, I think, you have to like spend a lot of time on it. I did that actually. I ended up like coming up with a lot of versions, and then I tried to get reviews from like who is already here in admitted. So yeah, I think that really helped, because I think I actually put my story straight. I kind of build up my story, and then the motivation I'm getting, the contribution I had made so far. So I think I put them in a well-aligned way, which is easier for the admission committee to see and understand how I would like fare in the program. So I think, yeah, that is another thing all the like potential applicants should focus on, which I think worked for me.
So rec letters and statements of purpose, 2 things that we've covered throughout our sessions as well. It's good to hear that others have that opinion too of how much focus we need to put on those areas of the application. And to get to another question that Harper asked, they're wondering about applying to universities outside the USA. If anyone of you had the opportunity to apply to and get accepted to universities outside of the US, and if so, if you had any recommendations about how the process might be different to navigate compared to the US.
One small experience that I had, I didn't apply to any universities actually outside US, but I tried to like reach out to some professors whose works I really liked. So one of them I actually got called for an interview, but I actually didn't end up getting offers because I didn't have any masters. So kind of in the outside USA, to get a PhD, you kind of need to have a master's already. So that is like one of the experience I had. Like other than that, I think the process is like pretty similar because like you have to like find the similar interest and then reach out to these professors.
So figuring out like degree requirements
Yeah,
from country to country is really important.
yeah.
If no one else can speak to that, then Harper was also wondering about your interview process and if you could speak to the format of the interview and how you prepared.
I could go ahead. So my interview was virtual, but this was also because it was 2021 or 2022 around that time. So people were still, mostly working remotely or hybrid. And there were four professors in the call, but a fifth one was supposed to join, but I had talked to her before the meeting to discuss. And so I'll just say there were five professors trying to interview with me. And they asked pretty, like question that you would expect, like why a PhD? Why did you decide to pursue this? What do you want to research? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Some of the ones that threw me off were like, what skills do you think you need to be successful in a PhD? I guess I don't know why that threw me off, but I think I just wasn't prepared for that particular question. But in terms of preparing for it, I did know current PhD students at UMSI, so I had asked them like, what was your interview process like? What are the questions they asked you? How did you go about it? And so that's how I prepared for mine. I was really nervous. I think I was shaking the entire time, and then I cried before and after the interview. So it was a scary experience, but it worked out.
Wow, thank you for making yourself so vulnerable. That takes a lot to say.
No problem.
So I interviewed last year and they were also all virtual. I like don't really know any, I haven't heard of any programs that fly you out like for PhD interviews anymore. I don't know if that's commonly a thing. I guess like for my interviews, they generally like ask me to like describe like my motivations for research, like specific projects I worked on, and like where our research interests aligned. I think one of like my interviews like included questions that like were focusing on my problem solving and technical skills. So like those I guess do appear sometimes. Um, Something that I thought was helpful was like not only knowing their research really well, but mine, just in case like they ask about like a specific item on my CV or like want me to go into like more detail about like specific kinds of analysis I did, just to like get a sense of like my technical skills essentially. Um, yeah, and so it was definitely a lot of like reading like professors' papers, like making sure that like there was at least like one paper that they'd written that I could talk more about and like describe how like it aligns with like what I wanted to do.
For me, for interview preparation, I actually made a slide for my introduction and like what type of past research experience I had, so that like these are the like usual questions professors ask, like what type of works you have done so far. So I prepared a slide so that I can easily present them. So other than that, I went through a few papers of the professor so that I can actually discuss with him about one of his works, so that he can actually there should be something to discuss with him. And other than that, I tried to ask questions as much as I can about their lab, the culture of their lab, So, and for the professor, like he just asked the basic questions like, what is my research experience? Why do you want to do PhD? And just that. But yeah, so I try to prepare as much as I can and like anticipate the questions that can be asked and like prepare yourself.
One thing that I wanted to say, I think I definitely, my plan was to really prepare, and I did. I like looked up stuff online on how like the types of questions that could be asked. But when it came to the moment, fun fact, I actually have ADHD. So sometimes like if I get really nervous, like I just completely forget like what I'm saying, and like I can't really remember like what I even like, what my idea was. So I think for me it was like more of like having that connection with just like how my advisor thought and like how she kind of like approaches research. So when it came to the interview, I kind of like forgot everything that I wanted to say about her paper, like the word that she wanted to say, but I was still able to make that connection because I was, still able to like kind of like connect with her at that, at that level of like, hey, I also have like this mission. Like I can't really tell you like I'm interested in this type of work because I forgot all about it, for the interview. But I can tell you that, that my goal is to do this. And my goal is to like increase, the accessibility of computing education. So I think that's just kind of like another piece of advice that I would give everyone here is just like don't feel so intimidated if you can really do it perfectly because I like Shanley, I also cry after my interview thinking like, oh my God, that was like the worst thing that I could have done, like there's no way they're gonna pick me, but they did pick me. And I think it was like, once then now that I like have a better relationship with my advisor and I know them personally, they definitely said, having that kind of like, everything in society is about people, so just being that good fit for the lab, being that good fit for advisor is also important. So like don't beat yourself if you can't really like, perform like at your best when you're doing your interview. Like you never know. So yeah.
So really forming a relationship with the person as well, not just knowing the research, but your people skills
Yes.
help. Definitely. Okay. If we've all, I can't remember if we all answered, but I can go ahead to our last question since we are getting close time-wise. How did you know the campus that you chose to attend was a good fit for you?
I can start. So I really liked working with my advisor. And then like I had also met other people in the lab, other people in the program. And like everyone was really nice, and helpful. And I also felt like the visit days like was really well run here. And so like that kind of gave me a glimpse into like how it would be like working, like to get reimbursed for like travel or something like that, just because those are like small details that I think like really affect your experience as well, in addition to like the research side of things. I also like really wanted to live in the city and have access to public transportation. And so Seattle was like kind of a good fit for that, I guess.
For me, like my campus is in Midwest, so like I was like first looking at the like how the weather there is. So the winter is very harsh, obviously, but like other than that, what worked for me is like the advisor I have, and I also like talked with a few of his students, and I got that like he's like very friendly, and like the people in the lab, I really like them. So despite the harsh winter that is waiting for me, I kind of like ended up choosing because like at the end, like I have to work, and like a PhD is like a big commitment. So uh, I have to be able to work on the type of things that I actually like to do. So yeah, that's the main thing for me choosing it.
For sure. So research, weather, navigating around, they're all factors to keep in mind. Okay. If no one else would like to chime in, then I'll go ahead and move to the next slide if Julia could transition. So we'd like to just wrap up our session today just by taking a moment to thank all of our panelists again for making the time to speak with us all today. And here on this slide, you can see the contact information for the different panelists as well. And we'll go ahead and copy this into the chat as well. But thank you all so much for making the time to come in to speak with us. We hope that as audience members, you've all been able to benefit and learn from other perspectives besides Dan and mine about the graduate school application process. And if we could go to the next slide, please.
As always, we do value your feedback. So if you can, please respond to this this survey. Those of you who are here live will be prompted once you leave, as always. But even those of you who are watching this asynchronously, I hope that this is still a valuable session for you, and we do appreciate your feedback. Next slide. And as always, also you can feel free to reach out to us afterward, offline for other questions that maybe we didn't have time for. Karen and I will likely stick around for a couple of minutes if anyone's got some stuff we want to talk about. And then next slide. And for next week, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that actually kind of came up. We'll go into some more details about some of the elements of, post-application. We've focused on every session up until this session. We sort of had a little bit of everything, but in every session up till now, we've mostly focused on the application itself. Next session will be about, okay, you've applied. Besides anxiety, now what, right? And sort of really talk about interviews, preparing for interviews. A couple people brought up like campus visits a moment ago. We'll talk about what those really are and what they mean. Stuff like negotiation and that element, just sort of progression of events that can occur post-application. So we hope to see you then next Wednesday, same time. Yeah, with that, we'll call it there. So thank you very much again for coming, and we'll see those of you who will be here next week. We'll see you next week.
And Julia, if you wouldn't mind showing the social media slide, that would be great. I'm not sure if it's already up.